a comprehensive and balanced strategy in charting Malaysia onto a stronger development path. That's the MADANI Economy Initiative announced by the Prime Minister. Now, how clear and different is this blueprint from previous approaches? And can it address core national challenges? I'm Anita Woo, and this is Money Matters. You're watching Money Matters, also available on HD via Tonton. On the show today with us, we have Khazanah Nasional's Managing Director, Datuk Amirul Feisal Zahir in studio. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome to the show. All right, so we'll start off with the MADANI Economy Initiative that has been described more of as a set of clear targets so far, rather than a laundry list of projects and as previous announcements.
Right.
So what do you think are the highlights of this framework besides the 7 key performance indicators? And can you elaborate on these focus areas of the initiative and how this will impact the direction of the economy moving forward?
Sure. You know, when you read the MADANI, Economy of MADANI, it's likening the country Malaysia like a house, right? So there's a ceiling and there's a floor.
Yeah.
And the idea is to raise the ceiling and raise the floor as well. Now, all of this anchored on the foundation of sustainability, as well as of integrity as well, right? The foundation, like in any house, the foundation is so key. And this is where, when you look at integrity, when you look at sustainability, that is actually something which is anchored on the values.
Yeah.
On, when you look at MADANI, for example, you've got sustainability, care and compassion, respect, innovation, prosperity, and trust, and that's some of the values there, and it's really anchored on that. Now, it's really the ethical underpinnings to ensure that things are done right, in pursuit of growth, in looking at institutional reforms, right, and trying to achieve social cohesion. And that's like the framework around that. Now, at the same time, you want to raise the ceiling as well. And this looks at innovation, trying to get companies to become more regional, making them globally competitive, and globally competitive.
Upskilling the workforce.
Upskilling, moving up the value chain.
Yeah.
Right? All of that is necessary in order to raise the ceiling. Now, raising the floor is to make sure that we have a good quality of life and a just life as well. So it's looking at social justice, championing that as well. And here we talk about inclusivity. Yeah. So it's really like an all of Malaysia, all-encompassing approach towards moving the economy, right? So that's the highlights of it: raising the ceiling, raising the floor, and having a strong foundation. Yes,
and hopefully bringing back Malaysia to its glory days, if not like helping it to be one of the forerunners of and leaders of Asian economies.
Right.
Yeah.
If you look at Economy of MADANI, it's really having these constituents play a role in building the economy, whether it's the government, whether it's industry, or whether it's civil society organizations or the RACAT themselves. And I can tell you about raising the ceiling. Now, raising the ceiling, economic complexity, going up the value chain is so key. I'll tell you a story of how China is doing it, and I went there recently. Right. And they actually use sustainability as a catalyst for innovation.
And driver.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at how we have grown as an economy, for example, right? Yes, we need a change, and sustainability can be used as a catalyst as well. So following the economy of MADANI, other ministries have actually come along, for example, the National Energy Transition. So those are the things that can actually catalyze the economy even further. And we have a role to play there as well.
All right, can we move on to the other end of the spectrum, which is to SMEs and other smaller businesses? So in that way as well, you're quite different compared to other GLICs or investment funds. How is the Madani Economy Initiative significant to the growth of these? I understand you have some impact funds and you're looking at social impact, but yeah, as they are integral as well to the foundation of the economy.
Absolutely. I think something like MSMEs make up about 38% of GDP, about 49% of the workforce for employment, right?
Yeah.
So absolutely key. I think what is interesting about the framework that we have here is that it recognizes the fact that there are different stages to the MSME. You've got medium-tiered companies that are globally competitive. And here you have forms of assistance. You know, Matrade, for example, are really helping this group through their mid-tier companies program. There's a lot of initiatives where it actually spurs them to become globally competitive. We have companies that are exporting, you know, they're mid-tier, but they're exporting globally, whether it's medical devices, whether it's IoTs. There's a lot of things happening there. Now, at the same time, you also have your smaller companies. And here, I think the last budget, we had like 70 initiatives to help the smaller companies on funding, on supply chain.
Thank you. Please hold that thought. We'll come back to the program right after this break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching Money Matters with our guest today, Datuk Amirul Feisal, MD of Khazanah Nasional, where we're discussing the new MADANI economic framework that was just revealed last month. So, Datuk Feisal, on to our next question. Ministers so far have been assigned to follow up on policies and programs based on the MADANI economy concept. For example, the economic minister has announced the National Energy Transition Roadmap, which you've actually been touching on already. And soon the government is to announce the Industrial Master Plan. Have we seen this before? This looks kind of different. And how do you think this is going to be implemented? I mean, because these are very specific roadmaps and transitions.
Right, right. Well, I think, I mean, how I see it, I think it's a real positive, and whether or not we've seen it before, that's a separate thing, but I think it's a real positive because it shows that this government is about execution as well. And I think, I'm sure the ministers have already thought about most of these things and trying to ensure that implementation of it happens and happens fast.
That is key.
And here's the thing, because you know, let's take a step back at this House of Malaysia and compare ourselves with our neighbors, whether it's Malaysia and Indonesia. So everyone is moving, and we just have to move fast.
We have a lot of catching up to do.
So there's many things that we need to do in order to move fast as well. But you know, one thing, while there is the energy transition roadmap, industrial master plan happening, I think there's another thing which I guess I didn't touch on before, which is the importance of raising the floor as well.
Yes.
Because it's not just about having that prosperity, but making sure that we also have the social justice, you know,
yes,
the quality of life for all. And that's why the floor is also important. We you know, the things like social upward mobility, healthcare and education. And these are things which also need to move fast together as well. All industries have a role to play. Even the rakyat through civil societies looking at social entrepreneurs have a role to play.
Yeah.
So this framework is really an all of Malaysia approach. And we all, it's actually a clear path that we can actually try to capture and play a role in it.
Have you heard about word on the ground in looking forward to some of these plans being implemented? What plans do you know of that are there to create more awareness amongst people about the initiatives under this MADANI economy? Right.
You know, I think what the government plans in terms of creating awareness, I won't be able to answer that. But there are many, many things that we are doing, for example, that we're trying to create that awareness through this program, through other things as well. I mentioned to you about our Impact Innovation Challenge and trying to crowd people in. And we have to tell a lot more people that, because, you know, whenever a GLC tries to do something in any country, there's always a worry that we're going to crowd out people.
And you want to crowd in, you want to include.
You want to crowd in.
Yeah.
And to do that, we want to create awareness.
Thank you, Dr. Feisal. All right, we'll go for a short break now as well, and we'll be back right after this break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're still on Money Matters with our guest today, Datuk Amirul Feisal, MD of Khazanah Nasional, where we're discussing the new MADANI economic framework. So, Datuk Feisal, on your point before, we're talking about raising the floor in the concept of the MADANI household. How is it, to my understanding, Khazanah has already had a strategy that was about advancing Malaysia and its stakeholders.
Yes.
So how has this changed, with the MADANI framework? Because from what I can tell, a lot of values have already been aligned. You had similar vested interests. Mm-hmm. So how has that changed for you? Okay.
Our Advancing Malaysia strategy is, Malaysia is our house, and it's advancing it and building it. I think the alignment is because it is the house, floor and ceiling coming together. Mm. So in that sense, I think there's a lot of alignment already on this. And the fact that, like I said before, that we are actually in the middle of the government, industry or private sector, as well as our role. And therefore, the constituents of this house, or the so-called the people who live in this house,
inhabitants,
are there, and we're in the middle.
Yeah.
So we have a role to play as well. And I think, I wouldn't say there's a change. I would say there's more of a need for us to move faster, more than anything, actually.
And do you see these policies, and what further, I'm sure more details will be rolled out in months to come, will be a catalyst to that?
I hope so. And why I hope so is because it actually gives a lot more opportunities for us. For example, our impact fund. Now, the Future Malaysia program, we do have, it's a 6 billion ringgit fund over 5 years. Now, in order to deploy that capital, then we need opportunities to come. So if policy changes, if the private sector get involved, everyone comes in together.
This is what you were saying before.
Yeah, that's right. Then we can actually accelerate that, the deployment of that as well. So it comes to that for technology, it comes to health and education, and there are many, many aspects, agriculture, for example. I think what we do hope is, with the framework in place, more people would come in and be really excited in order to push this a lot faster. And I hope we can actually play a role in that.
What kind of policies would you like to see being rolled out in order to have more partnerships as such, in order to move along with that?
For example, let's take in the looking at sustainability or climate change. That's very, very broad. Now, half the amount of emissions comes from the energy source. Mm-hmm. A quarter of it comes from mobility.
Transportation.
Right. Transportation. Now, let's take transportation, for example, as an area. Now, we've been looking at this as well. There's a lot of companies that are there looking at EV infrastructure, charging stations, but it's quite slow. So how can we help the existing players in order to help?
What about the power sector? TNB.
The power sector itself, again, when you look at the energy source, it needs to transition, or at least it needs to increase the renewable energy. And this is a sector that has been liberalized, where a lot of private players are already in that. So how do we actually help them grow faster? And at the same time, look at our national power company, Tenaga Nasional. They would also they have a lot on their hands, looking at the transmission distribution, making it resilient for renewable energy. There's a lot more work there. But in having that, then you have the MSMEs that have a role to play. So everyone has a role to play there. And we're there. Whether it's through Tenaga Nasional, we have a company called UEM that also has looking at that in terms of renewables. So many things are happening, and we have a role to play to partner people in order to move it.
And as you said, if the goal is to become one of the leading economies by 2030, or at least like a top 30 in the world, which is very ambitious, we really have to leapfrog that, and we really have to use innovation as well as technology and partnerships and policies that make things maybe less red tape. And
I hope so. And looking at the mobility, comparing ourselves to Thailand, they're actually quite advanced in terms of policies, and we'd like to see more of that happening.
Yeah.
So those are things that we'd like to see.
Thank you, Datuk Feisal. Let's talk about investments as well now. So with this blueprint, do you think that we'll be more engaging, a bit more attractive to foreign investors? Domestic or foreign, actually. Because we need that investment in order to move forward. We can't be expecting everything from the budget. So, How do you see things changing in that sense?
Well, I hope so. I think first of all, the economy Madani, when it was announced, I think it does demonstrate the sincerity of the government in wanting to really push the economy, acknowledging that there are gaps and trying to fill that in. You know, as an investor, typically as a foreign investor, before you want to look at it, okay, you have a framework, but you want to make sure that they're sincere and there's actually execution in order to deliver that. So that's something which we do think that people see. The next thing, of course, is implementation, right? To give them a bit more confidence. And this is where, to be honest with you, it's not just the government, but the private sector, the people have to come in and chip in. It's all of Malaysia approach, and they need to see that. And with that, opportunities come. We've already seen a lot of FDIs coming in. So there's you know, a lot of potential. And let me tell you something as well. Okay, fine. We look at the geopolitics around the world. People are talking about China +1, +2, +3. And we're uniquely positioned in order to capture that investments, whether it's FDI or it's capital market investments as well. Yeah. We're uniquely positioned. We have the right legal system, infrastructure, the right people, the talent pool. So this is where I do hope with that clarity going forward that there's a lot of opportunity to capture investors' interest. Where's
the missing link in terms of implementation, in terms of speed of implementation? I mean, obviously, we need stability and trust and confidence that we're going to do that. Do you see, how can we improve investor confidence?
Well, I think it is actually, you know, having more platforms where people can understand each of the initiatives better, but also seeing execution, implementation. I mean, that's necessary, right? Yeah. And I think people will put in money when they see that.
Okay, Datuk Feisal, we're going to go back to the macro. We're going to zoom out again. In terms of these different policies, we've come through, as we've mentioned, there's a lot going on at the moment. You know, I mean, there's the 12th Malaysia Plan, there's the National Energy Transition Roadmap, and there have been a lot of other frameworks, economic frameworks that were standing. With the Madani economy, how do you see it different compared to the rest?
I would say it adds the overall, like I said, framework of how to actually look at the house.
It's more holistic.
It's more holistic.
It brings it all together in a way.
And don't forget, there's a foundation, there's a ceiling, and there's a floor. And having all the constituents, whether it's the government, private sector, civil service organizations, or you know the NGOs of the right, etc., they all have to come in. It's that completeness. Now, each one of them, of course, has a role to play. You have a mid-term target, whether it's medium term, etc., and you have your more immediate terms. And each, you know, aspects of our economy, whether it's energy, whether it's the connectivity, whether it's communications, everyone has a role to play. So I would say it's more encompassing.
No, and quite holistic in its approach. I really hope that we see that implementation as well.
Yeah, well.
The other question I wanted to ask as well is in terms of social impact. And you were saying, you know, there are already a lot of, obviously to galvanize all of this, there's a lot of already private companies that are in participation in terms of, like, say, for example, the energy transition. How do you see their role in making sure that costs and things aren't transferred to the people? You know, just in terms of social impact, how do you think that will be implemented as we transition?
That is actually a very tough problem, and this is one of the things that we speak to our companies as well. And let's be honest about this, because we see if we want to try to improve wages, that goes up. If we want to look at energy transition, or perhaps some of the inflationary aspects, so you do have wage and costs increasing, and as a corporate, you see your margins being squeezed.
Yes.
But let me tell you this, if you look at the wages that we have in the country and compare it to other countries, it's actually pretty low. So how is it that other companies around the world can actually maintain their margins? and it's through that productivity, that technology. And we need to focus on that. I think some of our companies would need to focus on trying to improve that productivity and the technology in order to move further, and so that everyone benefits, the people, the companies, and I guess the shareholders as well.
Generating higher value all around, including raising wages. Thank you so much, Datuk Feisal. Thank you very much once again. Well, looks like that's all the time we have on Money Matters today. If you missed the earlier part of this episode, not to worry, you can also catch it up on Tonton. For more money insights that matter, be sure to join us next week, same time, right here on TV Tiga. With that, I'm Anita Woo. Thank you for watching and have a great weekend ahead.